Good afternoon. So in this instructional video, I'm going to be creating a large final version of my Kandinsky piece. And remembering that Kandinsky, the artist, could draw and paint the world in an abstract way or in a non-objective way. Now, under the camera, you see one of my very small color studies in preparation for this larger piece. And it's the same watercolor paper, the same acrylic paint, the same oil pastels, and I've even used some regular watercolor markers, and you know how well those work in combination with clear water, brush, and our special watercolor paper. So you can do that always. This being a mixed media piece, we are going to be mixing lots of different materials together. You must, however, use the acrylic black paint for very strong line work, and you must use oil pastels to some extent, all right? You can do other things if you like. Now, again, this being a small color study, I kind of liked it. And I like the strength of the lines and the fact that it's somewhat suggestive of an outdoor landscape. Maybe with fields, the sun, trees, maybe the wind blowing. As I said, suggestive. I don't really see those things, but they're kind of suggested. So I'm going to take this and get it out of the way, since that's my inspiration, and repeat something like it, not exactly like it, here on my larger sheet of paper. Now, you can see that my brushwork is very big and very bold. That's probably a good thing for a larger piece of paper like this. The bigger the paper, the more it can accept lines and colors, and so we're going to make sure that we make good use of this paper. Remembering that brushwork is all about controlling the amount of water and the amount of paint in your brush. And you've got to be careful on these watercolor brushes to always maintain a point, because without that point, you don't really have much control. So as you dissolve the paint over here on your palette, be sure to use a palette, okay? You kind of check to see that the paint is neither too thin nor too thick. Even though the lines that I'm using right now are quite thick, if I'm careful enough, just using the tip of the brush, I can vary or change the weight or thickness of the line to get something that's a little thinner. If I wanted to, I suppose I could use a finer tipped brush and get something mighty thin, but I don't think I'm going to go that route right yet. I don't know why, but these parallel lines, whether straight or curving, are kind of satisfying to me, as are these little dots right here. They create a rhythm by repeating, a pattern by repeating, that I find really satisfying. The black paint, when it dries, is permanent. You don't want to get it in your clothing. Being permanent, it will not redissolve. So we can put other colors on here, other paints on here, and the black lines will stay put. So I'm working around the edges here, somewhat based upon my small color study, not exactly, but kind of in the same spirit or feeling. And just like Kandinsky, my pieces, my line work, as dark as it is, really makes that an active surface. I don't think I'm real happy with it yet, but we're gonna keep working. These lines that all radiate inwards towards an imagined center kind of help to focus the viewer's attention. I can see that accepting some really bright yellows and oranges there. I might give myself one more area of color right there, so I can use several colors inside and not just one. I like the idea that I can use multiple lines here and repeat, and in repeating, create more of a reinforced shape, and also by repeating a rhythm. These lines were not present in my color study, the ones that I'm doing right now that cross the first set, but I kind of like it. I like the fact that they are thinner and they contrast with the other. I'm going to make these thicker, or about the same, I guess. And so I'm just about done doing my black acrylic paint. Lots and lots of activity across the page. Now, what I'm going to do is let this dry and come back to it later and begin to add color. Now, remember, we must use oil pastels, but you can use other materials too. And so when I return in just a little bit, after this is dried, let's see how it continues to develop. Welcome back. It's been about 10, maybe 15 minutes since I stopped painting, and looking at the surface, it appears pretty dry. If I look closely, I can see some areas where there's still a little bit of shine, like right there. If you touch it, there still may be a little wet paint, but by and large, I think we'll be safe. That's okay. We'll be safe to go ahead. See, there's a little wetness there. Safe to go ahead and start working on this. Now, if I needed to use more acrylic paint, I could. I found out that just by folding the palette in on itself, that will help preserve that paint if I wanted to use it again later. Believe it or not, it will stay moist, or I can throw it away, that's fine. This extra palette I can set aside. Do be careful with the paint. If you are going to throw it away, do so carefully so it doesn't get on your clothing. I still have my water here. I washed out my brush so the paint would not dry in it. Dry acrylic paint will ruin your brushes if you allow it to dry there. I've pulled out just a few water-based markers, which I might start with. And over here to my side, out of sight, I do have some oil pastels. Now remember, this was my original color study, and I might keep it handy just to look at it in case there's something about it that I want to continue to use. Earlier color studies also may have something useful in the way of colors or combinations of materials that I might reference or look at. So I might just leave these over here just in case inspiration strikes. Now what I think I'd like to do here, not with oil pastel, but this time with marker, let me jump around here with yellow. You notice how I can use my yellow water-based markers, and the marker can go on top of my dry paint without disturbing it. That's pretty cool. Well, I did pick up a little bit just now. Spoke too soon. But usually, if the surface is nice and dry, you can go ahead and color right on top of it without too much of a worry. Let me go ahead and snap the cap on that one, since I'm done with that one. Maybe in this case, I'll use lines. It may be that those lines will be blended out or not, I don't know. But you're trying to create a surface that's varied. Lots of different colors, lots of different line techniques, lots of different textures if you can imagine it or manage it. And we get a lot of that just by switching out our materials. So I'll go ahead and do the green there. And because I like it, if I put some blue in here as well, that again will create a more varied and interesting surface. Just crossing my first set of hatched lines with another set of a different color. Not everywhere, but just in a few places. Maybe right there. Looks like I kind of forgot this little guy right there. I'll just go ahead and substitute this blue down there. And that's maybe done. We'll come back there later perhaps and check it out. Since I have them handy, I have some of these portfolio oil pastels, and they in fact do dissolve in water. Now you don't have to dissolve them in water. See, this is the pastel. It says portfolio on the outside. Let me bring a little bit of water here. Remember, you can control the water in your brush by pulling against the lip or pulling against the towel. Maintain that point, and then go in there and redissolve that color and just spread it around. I don't think it moves around nearly as well as, say, my Crayola markers do, but just in case you'd like to dissolve some of these portfolio pastels, you can. If I were to take one and draw on top of the other, because the surface is very damp or moist, it's very easy to draw with that. It just kind of dissolves as you draw. So that was worth the experiment. Remember also that you can put the marker down like this and like this, leaving it just as is, or if you want to come back and hit it with a little bit of water, not much, dissolve the color and spread it out. Okay, so you can get those water-based colors from your water-based markers to behave like paints if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush and remove most of the water. I just want to go ahead and do a little dissolving over here of some of these colors. Not a lot, just a little bit. Don't know why, just wanted to do it. Okay, let me reach for a different type of oil pastel. This is made by Crayola also, but it is not one that will redissolve. Remember that oil pastels blend beautifully. So if I put one on top of another, and you don't have to press very hard because the pastels themselves are very, very soft, they blend very, very nicely. Because I'm going right over the black, and it's hard to even see where I'm going over the black because the black kind of asserts itself, makes it difficult to see the orange. That's great, it saves me some trouble. It's very easy to add color that way. Here comes some lighter yellow. Maybe I'll blend something else with that. Let's try this kind of dark bluish color. Let's see what happens. Remember, you can press very, very lightly. You don't have to press heavily. And maybe this darker green right here. Okay, now those oil pastels that I just used will not redissolve in water. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and find a color I haven't used. Let's go ahead and try this color. This is a yellow-green. Now see, that's almost dried out, and it even had the wrong cap on it, so let's throw that one away. It's okay if you find something that's not working. If you know that it's no longer any good, just go ahead and throw it away. Remember, you, the artist, have to be in charge of your tools, and whether or not they work well is up to you to judge. So a little bit of pink there. You know, since I had that pink in my hand and now I've got it back in my hand again, maybe I'll balance out its use somewhere else. You know, it'll go down on top of the oil pastel. Well, at least it'll go down on the white paper where the oil pastel did not go. I could even go over here and lay it down in this area and take my water and re-dissolve that and drag it out to kind of get it to fade out. That was easy and quick. Here comes some earthy brown. Maybe I'll go ahead over here with my earthy brown. Now, so far I've used a little bit of oil pastel and quite a lot of the water-based marker. And of course the water-based marker works very, very well on this watercolor paper. I like that brown. Might just leave that alone as it is. Let me flip back to some of my oil pastels over here. You know, I have this white one and I'm not really sure what good white does, but I guess we can find out. Let's try the white over here. It does cover up your lines a little bit. These black lines, the white does kind of cover them up a little bit and turning them more of a gray. So if you find that to be an advantage, you can use it. I'm now going over the wet paper where the pink is at. Again, we're adding a lot more line work to make it seem much more active. Let's see what else we have over here in our selection of colors. This is an unusual color. I wouldn't normally go for it, but let's try it out. It's a very, very light green. And let's try this darker blue green to go along with. Now I can go ahead and use my oil pastels for line work also. You notice that they have a very broad tip, so you're not going to get too many fine details out of your oil pastels, but you can still draw with them if you want. Let me go ahead and flip this upside down and add some oil pastel here. I think I'll be quiet now for a little bit and just continue. I'll speed up the film so we can get to the end a little bit faster for my final remarks. There now. It's done. Maybe not as good as I expected, but that's often the case with art. The fact is that you tried. I tried. And that's a good thing. And you do learn from your efforts. And very often, especially with lots of effort and lots of practice, you create some great things. So remember, this larger final for your Kandinsky piece is worth 50 points. More if you really knock it out of the park in terms of your use of detail and line work in this case, because it's so important to this design, using your brush and your black acrylic paint, and craftsmanship. Don't forget that. Now, you try.